Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and we're going to have a good time making a professional sheath for our box knife. Now, against the opinion of most professional leather crafters, I use a box knife to cut everything. But more so, if we work in a warehouse, or more specifically a leather warehouse, or a leather store, or a leather shop, I use my knife all day long, and it's nice to have it right on my hip. But also, look at that. Great, tight, wet molded sheath. That's exactly what we're going to do. But on that point, just about any tool pouch, same set of skills, same set of tools, exactly the same thing, just a little different shape. And we can even go a little bit rustic if we want to. All right, anything I use in this video, weaverleathercraft.com or check below. We've got links going to take you straight to our website. So let's step over here and knock a pattern together. No real need to jump over to digital patterns here because this is an easy pattern, very few measurements. Let's start right here. I'm going to carry my knife on the right side of my body. Now traditionally I want my blade facing backwards, but also I've got a lanyard on here. It'd be nice if that was also backwards or to the back of the knife. The point I'm getting at is if I'm standing here looking this way, my knife is going to be this. So therefore this is my outside. Let's do this. Let's mark that. Going to make everything very easy. But at the same time, while we're marking that, let's take care of something else. With my knife, I want about 1.5 inches sticking out. Entirely up to you. You could make that much less shallow or deeper. But let's go with about 1.5 inches. So, to do that, I'm going to put my square next to my knife, and I'm going to drop a piece of tape in right at 1.5 inches. Okay, that's doing two things for us. First off, I know which side is up or out. But secondly, now I know how deep my sheath's going to be. So let's start right here on our piece of paper. Now, if we like this pattern and it fits for us, we can jump over to some of our plastic sheeting or pattern sheeting. Makes a great pattern. But let's draw in two parallel 1.5 inch, give or take, lines because all we're doing here is finding a center line. Now I can draw a center line on this and then I can see it, but up here I'm not sure where it is. If I draw two parallel lines, I can see exactly where my knife needs to sit. Okay, let's take our knife, press down, butt against our tape, against our edge here, and let's draw out our knife. Okay, so that's easy enough and it's centered. Now let's do this. Let's go 3/8 of an inch out all the way around. We can use a compass. It's really nice to have a wing divider with a pencil on it, but I find those a little hard to get accurate. So all I'm going to do is make a number of marks at 3/8 of an inch out. Then I'm just going to mimic the design or the shape of the blade. And my two marks right at the throat so I know exactly where I'm coming in. And 3/8. Okay, let's draw this in. Okay, that looks good. So let's cut out to our pencil line. Okay, that looks good. That's going to be our back panel. But let's do this. Let's draw our up. So therefore, we can flop this. Now we've got our left-handed sheath. One more thing. We're going to drop in a clip. So therefore, I want to bring this in, but I got to be careful. I don't want to bring this too deep because I'm going to have to set a rivet once we've sewn this together. But I don't want it too close to my top. So let's come in just about 1/2 inch and let's center that. Looks good. Okay, let's draw this in and across my top. Now, we're going to have to punch an oblong hole here. So let's draw in a pin line across there for our oblong. Okay, let's lay that back in and drop in for my rivet hole. Easy enough. Okay, so the back piece is done, ready to go. Let's jump over to our front panel or the panel we're going to mold. So let's lay this in up because my top grain is going to be forward. Let's square across our top, draw this in. Okay, from here, we need some extra room because we're going to mold this down and we need a little room to where we can use our fingers to mold. So therefore, from this point, let's come out about 3/4 of an inch, give or take, because of the majority of this, we're actually going to trim this off to the body. It's going to look just like it was die cut. And there we go. Okay, let's cut this out. Okay, so far easy enough. That's our pattern. So let's do this. Let's take this, step over to our main table, cut some leather. We're going to use 2 different weights here. So for our pouch, the part we're going to mold, we're going to use a 4 to 5 ounce, and for our backing, an 8 to 9 ounce. We're going to bring these out of our single shoulders. I love these. Good quality leather, but very affordable. Let's start right here. For our pouch, the part we're going to mold, we're going to use a 4 to 5 ounce natural veg. So just happens that I have a nice square edge right there. Let's butt against that. Now, when I made my pattern, I was just a little too close to the edge of the paper. So I'm going to add just a hair more length there, or more width. But we can use a pin here, again, because we're going to trim most of this off. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be a clean cut. So let's cut this piece out. Okay, ample room to mold there. Let's reset here, pull out an 8 to 9 ounce single shoulder, cut our back panel. All right, for this piece, we're going to need a good clean cut. Now again, using a pin, not necessarily the best idea, but really, we're going to trim, we're going to glue, we're going to bevel, and we're going to die. So it's no real issue. Okay, that looks good. Now, let's mark for our round hole, and let's mark both ends of our oblong. Therefore, we can make sure that that's parallel to our throat line. Now let's cut this out, but we need to cut clean here. And split the ink line. That is exactly what we're hoping for. Now, if you're not good at cutting a circle or a round corner, what we can do is simply make a number of smaller cuts. And one last, and there we go. So now we've got a nice round corner. Let's do that on our other side. And our last corner. Okay, well that looks pretty clean, pretty tight. Now, one thing, I'm going to reset here because I always forget to do this. Notice across the top of each, no bevel, no groove. So I'm going to reset. We're going to drop in a groove of bevel, and we're going to slit the throat on both. Using a pin is a love-hate relationship. I can see it, but I wear it. None on the project, that's what counts. Okay, let's jump over to a groover, and I'm going to groove just the throat on both pieces. Okay, for our 8 to 9, I'm going to go with a Master Tools edger, front and back. And when I jump over to my 4 to 5, I'm going to go with a number 1. Okay, well that looks good. Now, let's take a dressing sponge. Now these come much larger, but when I cut them down, they are very economical, good quality sponge. Now I don't want my water to run across the face in case I'm using a light color dye or no dye at all. So I'm going to drop that on the edge of my table. There we go. Now I can really have some good body. So I'm going to take my slicker, pressure not the point, more heat and friction. I don't want to push so hard that I develop a small lip across there. About 1.5 dozen passes. Now I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but now it's very smooth, glossy, feels good to the touch. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay, same way, that looks good, nice. All right, let's step over to our punching table, drop in a round hole and our oblong. We're going to use an 1/8 inch round hole. This is our Master Tools for our rivet hole. Now, on our oblong, 7/8 inch. This is a little bit of an obscure size. We're not all going to have that. 1 inch is going to be fine. But since I have 7/8, let's use that. Now I'm going to drop that in right between our points. So therefore, the 2 points are going to help me keep that flush across the top. All right, set and ready to go. Let's mold some leather. When we're wet molding, we're just going to work this a bit at a time. So let's take some water, get our piece good and wet. Okay, got some good moisture in the leather. Let's lay this down and let's give that about 10 minutes. Let that water wick in nicely. Now, if you're worried about your knife or gun, whatever you're going to mold to, you can always cover that in a good packing tape. That will protect it. But on this knife, not terribly worried about it. So let's start right here. I'm going to take my throat and I'm going to square that with my tape. Right in the center. Now, what we've got to be careful with here, fingernails. So trim your nails. That'll make perfect sense here shortly. But what I'm going to do is press. Now, as I press, I'm going to stretch the leather. That's going to keep us from getting wrinkles or too many wrinkles. So I'm actually going to use this part of my first two fingers and my thumbs. So therefore, we have no hard edges touching the leather. Tools, we can use tools here, but there's not a tool that's not going to have a hard edge, which will in turn will leave a mark. So let's just work this down for about 5 minutes. Just keep working that down around our corners and our bends. So already we've got a pretty nice mold coming along. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this about 15, maybe 20 minutes, let it sit, dry a little bit, then I'm going to come back and work it again. Looks good thus far. Now, let's work it a little bit more. I can feel that it's starting to dry a little bit. So let's work this with our fingers. Now, the more we work it, the tighter our mold's going to be. So therefore, that looks good thus far. Okay, let's do this. Going to give it about 15 minutes. Work it a little bit more. Then after that, I'm going to let this dry for a good maybe 5-6 hours. Our sheath is dry and I can feel there's absolutely no moisture. We want to make sure this is good and dry. So now we're just going to line these two up. We've got a little room for error here. One of the points of doing it like this. So I'm going to take a pin and just about 3/8 inch from this edge. All I'm doing is drawing in a guide so I don't have a full miss. But let's circle around that about 3/8 inch out. Okay, we know where we're going to hit. So let's take some white glue. In fact, this is the Leathercraft cement. Strangely strong. This is an excellent cement. Let's just drop some in on the inside of our line. Good. If we colored a little bit outside of the lines, it is no issue. Okay, let's lay our sheath down. I'm going to butt right to the throat. Now, this is going to separate a little bit. Actually, we need this too. We don't want this to be too tight. Therefore, our knife won't fit down in. But we have 3/8 of an inch. So let's take a clip, an inexpensive clip, so we don't have a lot of pressure on that. Drop that in. We're going to push that other side in just a hair. Again, right about 3/8 there. So let's clip that. And now let's just put a clip about every 2 or 3 inches all the way around. And one more clip. Okay, let's give that about 10 minutes. Let that glue set. Our glue has dried well, so let's take our clips off. That feels good. I can feel the backing all the way around. We've got a good consistent edge. Now let's do this. We're going to take a knife, sharp blade or new blade, because what I'm going to do is lay this on the edge of my cutting table, and I'm actually going to use the backing as my guide when I cut. There we go. Look at that. That looks like it was die cut. Okay, so let's do the rest the same way. And our last corner. Okay, well that looks pretty good. Very nice cut. Now I'm a little bit over here. I can always come back in and trim this if I need to. And what we can do is sand this as well. So if your corners aren't just perfect, let's add a little sandpaper. We'll take care of that. All right, let's step over to our punch table. We're going to drop in a groove line and a chisel line. I typically want to put my groove line in about 1/8 of an inch, a little bit under 3 millimeters. But what I've got here, I've marked this groover because now I'm just a hair more, maybe 3.1 millimeters, but also too, I've clipped off the arm. The arm on these is relatively long, but I've clipped that off so that's not going to rub against the inside of a molded project. So let's lay in a groove starting right here and work our way around. Okay, that looks good. So let's do this. We're going to go with an 1/8 inch flat chisel. But again, we've got the problem of a 4 to 5 and an 8 to 9. So I'm going to stick with my 2. A 4 or 6 is going to be very difficult not to go through but to come back out. So let's start right here. Now this is going to want to push over a little bit. So I need to make sure, first off, I'm going to drop my first tine to the outside, second tine to the inside, so I know where there's a good measurement or a good spacing there. So let's drop our chisel right in our groove line, and I'm going to do my best to go as straight up and down as I can. I can even lean in a little bit. What I don't want to do is lean out, so therefore my chisel actually comes out of the edge of my leather. Two tines, and I can see them. That's going to make sewing very easy. So with this, these are stuck. So let's just have patience here. That's hard to do, but a little bit of patience, and this will work out nicely. Now, since I'm using a 2, and it's going to be very tedious to do one at a time, what I can do, first tine, last hole, hit it lightly. Now I've got a mark. So therefore, I can put my first tine in. There we go, work that through. Looks good. So really, I'm kind of cutting the number of holes I have to punch in half. Not a big savings, but it'll help. So I'm going to work my way all the way around. When I get down to my corners, I can use the same technique, but I'm going to jump down to my single tine. So I can put the first tine, last hole, mark that. Now I can make more of an angled chisel there. And the 1, so easy, in and out. Same again, mark, and now I'm back into a straightaway. And one more, that looks very good. Very consistent thus far. So right there, we've got room for just one more. There we go. Okay, let's step over, bevel our edges, then we're ready to add some dye. For our front panel, we've got a 4 to 5 ounce, so I'm going to go with the Master Tools edger number 1. When we flip over, we're up to an 8 to 9 ounce, so we'll use a number 2 for our backing. Easy enough. Okay, let's flip this over, drop this on the edge, and I'm using our white cutting board here so we can see what we're doing. Not going to be as easy, but we'll give it our best shot. Okay, good. Our throat already rounded and slicked. So therefore, let's jump over, add some dye. We're going to go with black dye. Absolutely the timeless classic. Very clean. It's going to hide any marks. If we have pin marks, they're no issue. But we could go with the walnut. That's the walnut in the Pro dye. Is that not gorgeous? Love the white stitch line on that. So let's set these aside. Now, with the Pro dye, I can dip dye. That's what I've done here with the walnut. But really with the black, we're not going to worry about streaking. So let's go with a dauber. And let's just get full coverage here. And there we go. Now, what I like about dip dyeing is I drop this in, pull this out, covers every edge, every hole, every chisel line. But it's going to use more dye. With a dauber, quick, easy, maybe 2 coats. Might add another one, but let's just set that aside and let that dry. About 2 hours of dry time. Looks good, feels good. I can feel no moisture at all, but also big point. Dyeing leather does not have to be messy, time-consuming, or expensive. A simple funnel, some gloves, and notice I have dyed just about on nothing but my project and my thumb because evidently there was a hole in my glove. So let's reset here. We're going to add a top coat. With our leather balm, best thing to do, we need to get as much coverage in our first pass as we can, but without dripping wet. Now with the black, not worried about streaking, but with the brown, we do. So let's take a dauber. Going to have a dauber and just a basic cotton rag. So we'll apply and then buff. Okay, now let's take the cotton rag and let's buff this. Now, leather balm always freaks me out a little bit because it always goes very matte when we first start to buff. But given just a little time and patience, look at that. Very nice gloss to that. Okay, we're going to reset up. We're going to put in a stitch line. A lot of light here, but I picked the darkest color possible. So, all right, with our thread, I'm going to go about 5 times our length, maybe a little bit more, because we're going through black. So therefore, the front end or the leader on my thread is going to pick up all the dye. We'll get a little dye on this, but we'll knock that out when we hammer this down. It's going to be a nice bright white. Now, this is our 0.8 tiger thread. It's nice thick thread. It's going to look really good on here. And our John James needles, the number 18. That's my absolute favorite. Now, typically, I would start in my first hole. We're doing a saddler stitch. I'd start in my first hole and just work my way down. But what I want to do is I'm going to come through my second hole. Let's equal out our thread. Now let's start, it's a little bit harder to come through the back because if you think about it, our front is a funnel shaped hole. On the back it's going to pucker. So let's come through our first hole, give that a little bit of tension, back through our second hole. Now what I can do to keep from splitting my thread is I can pull this thread back in that hole. So therefore that hole's wide open. All right, there we go. And let's go around one more time. Okay, so now let's crank down on that because we've got a double stitch right here, right at the throat. So now I'm simply going to work my way down. Let's open our hole coming from the front, again the funnel shaped hole. Bring that through, make an X, and I can actually push the thread under the needle, so therefore I don't worry about running that into my finger. Now it's a hand sewing needle, so no sharp point, but still. All right, let's tighten that down. I'm going to work my way all the way around. Now when we get down to our end, we're going to do the same thing we did on the other side. I'm going to loop twice, but before I come back through that second loop, we're going to hide our knots. So let's complete, come back through the second hole. Now, with this, on our front panel, let's just go through the first ply of leather and bring our needle to the inside. Okay, so we've got 2 loops there. Same thing on the back. I'm just going to come through the back ply only. Now let's crank that down. And in fact, it might even help if we do each side separately. Okay, that looks good. Now on our inside, what I'm going to do is tie a square knot. If I can get this separated. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take my right, go over my left, circle around. And I'm going to draw that down in, but I'm going to put that right on the end of my finger so I can push my finger way down in the sheath. Okay, now we're going to go left over right, circle around, same thing. There we go. Okay, that's going to be easy to hide. Let's do this. Let's take our box knife. Now, I'm going to put my knife right down in here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the thread across the knife instead of pushing the knife across the thread. So let's force that down in there. There we go. Very nice. Now, next step. That looks good though. Very clean, very tight. Let's step over to our quartz. We're going to hammer down our stitch line. Since we have a molded piece, we need to be careful here. We don't want to ding the edges. What we can do is use a tack hammer. Just work along. Or, if you're not comfortable there, we can take a mallet, flip this over on the edge of our quartz. Now, with this though, you need to make sure I have a smooth or rounded or beveled edge there so that I don't scrape, again, the edge of my leather. But now, I can use either mallet or tack hammer. Okay, there we go. Now, what that's done, it's closed our holes down a little bit. It's spread that thread out, make it a little bit wider since it's going through black dye. But also, too, very clean and very straight. One big point. Notice on the back here, my sewing is not perfect. That could certainly be better. right here a little bit better. The point I'm trying to make here is we're going through over 1/4 of an inch of leather. If your chisel isn't straight up and down every time, you know what? That's the way it is. That is the mark of a handmade project, hand-sewn. That's exactly right. So all we have to do now is slick our edges, drop in our clip. So let's reset for edges. Okay, let's use a little gum tragacanth, and I'm going to rub that on my edges, get a good coat. We've got a top coat on here, so if by chance we get a little on the top grain, it's not going to be an issue. That will rub right off. Okay, let's rub off the excess with just a cotton rag. And let's slick this. In fact, this top groove is almost just right. And there we go. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up that edge, but nice. Feels good. I've got a nice smooth slick, a little bit of gloss to it. Okay, let's reset here. Knock in our clip and we're done. Getting this clip in can be a difficult process. Actually, it's quite a breeze. The problem is our clips are super tight. It's been on my belt 7 years and that clip still in good shape. So with this, let's do this. Let's take a dowel. I'm going to force that into that clip and I'm going to force that open. So now I can slide that into that oblong just enough down. Now I can pull out the dowel and that slides easily in. Now we're going to use a medium double cap rivet. So I'm going to take a pair of pliers or a needle nose and I can work that down in there. Look at that. I can see that pattern is good. So let's push that through and let's push a cap onto that. So therefore that's going to stay where it is for me. It's not going to fall apart. Now let's take this piece, run that in. Now take 2 more pieces of leather. What I'm doing is just, I'm lifting the little anvil up. So therefore, that's good and tight. Now I can set that rivet. I'm going to set this on my quartz so I know there's no texture here. Nothing's going to impress on my leather. So let's lay that right there. I'm going to turn this left so I can hold that down a little bit. There we go. Our rivet is set. Look at that. Is that not beautiful and clean? What a great project. And extremely helpful as well. I always know where my knife is when I'm in my shop. Now the biggest point of this video, simple techniques, simple tools. And with those, we can make a very finished, professional sheath for just about any tool out there. And the last thing, the one thing we have not done, let's check our fit. Spot on perfect. Just what we're looking for. In fact, it's tight enough to where that knife's not going to slip out, but at the same time, comes out easily. I hope every box knife sheath you make is gorgeous. Hope you've had a good time with this, because I certainly have. Good luck with your projects.